Hello and good evening everybody, and welcome to our Insight into Performing Arts. My name is Mrs Norton. I'm Head of Sixth Form here at Manchester High School for Girls, and I'm really excited to welcome you all to this event this evening, and also to be able to introduce our speakers to you. So coming up in a few moments, we're going to be hearing first of all from Mia, who is currently studying and will be able to talk you through her experiences. I'll then be heading over to one of our guest speakers, Olivia, who is currently performing on television. And we'll then be going on to Sheena, who works in the Ambassadors Theatre Group. And we have a guest speaker who is currently actually working and may well hopefully be able to join us a little bit later, Anna, who is also a theatre stage manager. At the end of the evening, as is our normal structure for these events, we'll be hearing from Miss Hannon, who's our Head of Careers, and we're also very fortunate to hear this evening from our Director of Drama here at Manchester High School for Girls, Mrs Haves, who's going to be talking to you a little bit about routes into this profession and this career, and some of the things that you can be doing now to improve your skills and interests in this area. So, welcome everybody, and I would also just like to say that at the end of the evening there'll be time for questions, so if you have any questions you'd like to ask, if you want to just post them in the chat Q&A at the side of your or top of your screen. Towards the end of the evening we'll be able to address some of those questions. So thank you so much once again, and to all the organisers behind the scenes that have helped put this together. And I'm going to hand over now first of all to Mia, who's going to talk to you about her experiences as a drama and performing arts student. So thank you very much, and over to Mia.
Thank you, Miss Norton. Hello. Can you hear me well? Is it all good? Yeah. So yeah, I'm Mia. I left Man High in 2019, so a year and a half ago, and I'm currently a student at the Royal Academy of Music, which is a conservatoire. So a conservatoire is basically a university type institution which specialises in a performing arts. Mine is classical music. Usually it may be classical music or drama or dance or things like that. So I'll just take you through basically what I did at Man High, what I did in my preparation to getting into conservatoire and how it is now, some things that I wish I'd heard, things like that. So my time at Man High, not very long ago, for A-level, I did English literature, drama, Spanish and music, which if you're a bit canny, you can figure out were the options from my GCSEs, because I didn't want to do sciences, I didn't want to do maths or anything, so I got rid of them straight away. And which, to be fair, it doesn't need to be what you have to do. I know a lot of people on the same course as me that took a much more scientific route, did music with sciences, for example, but personally I had to go the arts way, and they were a very easy choice for me because it was what I loved. And I did all 4 subjects for 2 years, which I found to be quite a good balance, actually, considering the practical nature of drama and music. My favourite part of the A-levels were sort of the ways in which they could interact with each other, I found. For example, sort of, we did Yerma, a Spanish play and drama, so I could read that in Spanish. In Spanish, sort of doing my project on Spanish opera, for example, performing one of the plays we did in English in drama. So it was, they all fed into one another in a very productive way. It felt like one big A-level sort of split into its little counterparts. Also, because they were art subjects, it meant I had very small classes, very focused teaching, which meant at the time I was applying for conservatoires and for arts things, I really had a good line of communication with my teachers, who are brilliant teachers, to suck up to them right here, and they are a lifeline when applying to conservatoire. But my main thing about Man High that I'll talk a bit about now is the extracurriculars, which if you know me, you'll find predictable that I'm going to talk about, but I think Man High offers, better than any other school, such an amazing range of extracurriculars in the arts, and I really did try to get involved in every single thing that I could with drama and with music, to get as much performance experience as possible, to sort of perform a lot of repertoire, a lot of different pieces, a lot of different plays that I could then list down and tell people that I've had the opportunities to perform. And then in later years, also taking an active role was very important. So I ran vocal group. I had a stint as director of Year 10 Drama Club. We did a play in a week with Mrs. Haves, which was really good in producing my independence, my initiative, something which I've used a lot now in uni. So if you are older, I would say try and take the initiative. If there are rehearsals that need to be taken, then just offer to take them, because they are more than happy, the staff are more than happy to do things with you. And I did all these things because I loved doing them. And we are in Manchester. You've got to say that we have a lot of extracurriculars around in Manchester, so do take part in them, because it does give you performing experience and audition experience, which is what I found invaluable when applying. So we come to year 13, and I applied for actually both university and conservatoire. So, and you apply for them in very different ways. I applied for both because I wasn't really that sure. I wasn't dead set on doing singing. I thought it was a very risky option, and a lot of your parents, maybe my parents, definitely said you should take the safe option of doing a real degree, quote unquote. But I applied for liberal arts, and I won't be talking about that because I didn't do it. But then I also applied for conservatoire, which is done in a different way to applying to university. So you go through QCAS, or Conservatoires UCAS, and there are sort of 11 conservatoires there. Some aren't on QCAS. Some drama schools are a smaller part of a university in itself. I remember personally, Guildhall was its own website. So do check the websites, how you go through them, because they have different requirements, different things that they need, different application deadlines, which is the tricksy thing, because they trip you up, those application deadlines. You do need a personal statement, which may seem, I felt it was a waste of time, considering I'd be going and meeting everyone and auditioning for them. But I think it's a really good way to sort of showcase some of the exciting things that you personally have done or taken the initiative with, than different people. So a lot of the things I wrote in my personal statement, I ended up talking about at my audition, and it's a great way to build a rapport about something that you have a passion about. So do write interesting things in your personal statement. And then we get to the main bit, which is the auditions. So I applied for 4 conservatoires and I had 4 auditions, and the structure of the audition was the same vaguely the same. It was a first round, which was in front of a few singing teachers, then an academic interview, which varied. Sometimes it was very hard, sometimes it was quite simple, just a few questions, and then a final last round audition in front of the head of department. Sometimes there was a workshop in between, which was a really lovely way to sort of meet the people that are auditioning at the same time as you, and to sort of get a taste of what it will be like. So be aware of those and be calm in those. And the requirements for each audition are different, so do check, because I sung different things at each audition. For one, I had to prepare a poem, for example, so it's not always going to be cut and dry. You are going to need to pull a few different things out of your bag. My advice, that I wish I'd heard for auditions, is that get there early for these auditions, because I felt quite a bit of pressure on them, because they are sort of the big auditions to your next stage of life, your sort of university stage. So you want to be calm, you want to be ready. So I'd get there early. I found that I would perform better if I'd been there overnight, because the trains were really, really dodgy sometimes when I went down, which they are very amenable, the conservatoires. They can change your times, and so it's not a big stress. But I saw a question, but I will answer that. We'll answer that at the end. But I felt that staying over was the best way that I could stay. I stayed at a friend's flat, which was a very easy, simple way. It meant that I didn't have to worry in the morning about rushing down and trains. Wear something professional but comfortable, I think, is an important thing, because especially with classical music, you want to sort of be all hoity-toity and upper class. if I can say that. But so you saw a lot of people going in big ball gowns with boning and like dramatic, I'm an opera singer. When really I think that's counterproductive to what you want. I wore a black shirt and black trousers to every one of my auditions because it was something I was used to performing in. I've performed countless times in blacks, and I wanted to feel comfortable because really you're in the most uncomfortable situation. You're having to sing like off the cuff with an accompanist who you probably rehearsed with for like 5 minutes, and people who are giving you sort of devil eyes, especially when you're 17, 18. It's quite a stressful experience. So wear what you're comfortable in. Someone once told me, wear something small so that they'll remember you, which you take that with a pinch of salt. I wore octopus earrings to all of my auditions, and I think it worked because I did talk to a lot of people about these earrings, even if it was just one of the stewards walking you. Considering they're seeing hundreds of people a day, they can go, oh, but that girl with the octopus earrings, she was quite, quite funny. So just a little small thing like that. You don't have to do that, but that was a piece of advice I got that I thought was really good. And I think with these auditions for your next stage of life, so for drama school, for conservatoire, I think the main thing to remember, my advice would be that things do go wrong on the day. It is really, really hard considering you have one day to show the people that you're thinking of spending the next 4 years of your life with what you've got. And it's a lot of pressure. I found it a lot of pressure. And you can have days where you don't sing well, where you're not in the zone, things like that. And that's okay. Your rejection doesn't really define you or define how the rest of your auditions go. For example, before RAM, 3 days before my RAM audition, I got a rejection, and it really spun me through a loop. And then I had my RAM audition. I thought, oh, that's going to go bad as well. And now I'm at RAM being Royal Academy of Music. So it doesn't mean anything. They're just days, and you will move beyond them. And I decided to accept my place at Conservatoire. Obviously, I'm here now because music was becoming more and more my life and sort of my feeding drive that I needed, and I couldn't really imagine life without it. So I thought, I've got to be doing music every day. And the good thing was I only needed 2 E's in my A levels, so that took the pressure off somewhat. I think it meant that I performed better because I wasn't stressing about them. So that was the audition experience, and now I'm at RAM. And I've been there for 1.5 years, and my degree is a Bachelor's of Music. So you have at universities, you can have a BA or a BSc, so a Bachelor's of Arts or a Bachelor's of Science. I'm doing a BMUS, which is a Bachelor's of Music in Performance, and this is a 4-year degree, so I'm not even halfway through yet. The main thing about Conservatoire is that they are really small. It's the one thing that if you gave me 1 minute to talk about this, so what would you tell anyone? It's how small they are, because it is like a school. And I say that in the best way possible. There are 109 people in my year. And by in my year, I mean there are 109 people in year 2 of the whole of Royal Academy of Music. So there are 10 of us doing singing, which is, for context, is smaller than a year at Manchester Grammar, for example. So it's like a school. It's small. You get to know absolutely everyone, and people hear that and they go, oh, but it's not university. And no, it's not really university. I'm not there to do university. I'm there to do music and singing. And I think it's really wonderful, partly because I did love school, but everyone's an adult, everyone's mature, so you've got none of the schooly sort of drama or anything like that. Only the best bits, which is like the intimacy, the really sort of tailored teaching, the knowledge of everyone, the sort of meeting everyone, because you're going to be working with these people in the future. These are going to be the people that you're in the orchestra with or you're in the opera with, and they're going to be your colleagues from now until the peak of your career. So it's good to meet them and good to make friends with them. And I'd say the one downside of it is the fact that we don't have big societies and big events like universities. But that's not to say that you can't create these things. I think when I was talking about taking the initiative, this year I started the Feminist Society at Royal Academy of Music because there wasn't one. I felt there should be one because, you know, you meet a lot of people that you want to prove wrong in a feminist way. So I thought I'd start it up. And the student union was so willing to get that started. It was a very, very easy thing. So if you start taking the initiative now at school, you're going to be so well catered to just sort of take the initiative in the future at university, in small places like conservatoire, where you just sort of need to buy it in the bud and say, come on, let's do this. So my typical day, what I actually do, and I'm going to take this for pre-COVID times because it's very, very different now. So this is what would usually be happening. I get 2 singing lessons a week, 1 coaching, 1 performance class in front of the head of department, and then a variety of other singing classes, which have included German song, English song, Italian language, French phonetics, movement, drama, a lot of classes such as that, like specific repertoire classes. That depends on your instrument, depends on your speciality. They will change for whatever you have, but you have a lot of contact hours is what I'm saying, as opposed to a university. You also have all your academic classes. Like Royal Academy is notorious for its heavier pressure on academics, but we have analytical skills, oral skills, performance in context, which is music history. We have lectures on those, we have seminars on those. So your brain does have to work. It's not one of those you can just perform and then not do any sort of written work. There is a lot of written work to do. You're also expected to practice your instrument every single day. So for singing, that would be 1 hour a day. For a pianist, that is up to 6 hours a day. So you've got a very, 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 very full days, a lot of independence with how you practice. Sometimes you'll have concerts coming up, masterclasses coming up, operas coming up, rehearsals. So you're very, very busy, which is how I like life, how I've sort of filled my life throughout school and now. But it takes a bit to come to terms with, but because you're doing sort of your chosen thing, so music, dance, drama, art, what your passion, it doesn't really feel like you're that busy. It just feels like you're spending your day doing what you really, really enjoy. You're also encouraged to take part in external opportunities, so competitions, masterclasses raise funding, people teach to make extra money. And then I personally, because I'm in London, love to just, go see a play in the evening, which there are so many great student tickets and deals on at the minute. It's so, well, not at the minute, but pre-COVID, unfortunately, there are so many great deals that you can just spend the time in London getting to know the capital. And sort of after this, personally, I still have a lot of study left to do. So I'm only at the very, very beginning of my singing career. There is postgrad and opera school and sort of young artist schemes that I still have to go through, because just for singing, it takes a long time for your voice to mature. But people are already joining orchestras. You get your contacts in this time right now. So it's very, very exciting for me to talk about things like that. But yeah, I hope I've enlightened you a little bit as to the goings on of a conservatoire. And if you have any questions, I will happily answer them after everyone has spoken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. That was fantastic. And I can see you haven't changed a bit, still very effusive and chatty and positive and enthusiastic, and that is wonderful. So thank you so much. I think that was a really, really, really kind of good run through of everything and how you got to where you are. I love the bit about the octopus earrings. I've made a note because I think that's brilliant for all interviews. Go with the octopus earrings. I love it. Right. We are going to move on through all of our speakers, but I think there is a question now that I think is kind of quite specific, Mia, to your situation. And it's the one about if you had opposition from your parents, or if your parents aren't that keen, how did you manage to persuade them? So if you could just give a very brief answer to that, and we can maybe deal with that. Just a very brief answer, kind of in like one line really. How did you manage to do that? So we're on our schedule. I'm not going to go into all the questions now, but I think that's quite specific to your situation, Mia, if that's all right.
So my parents are both medics, just to preface this. They wanted a medic child, and I don't think they're here, so I can say that. But basically it got to the point where they couldn't say no. If you love something, if it's like your favorite toy and your parents are taking it away from you and just keep going and taking it out of the trash or something, there comes a point where they can't say no, where you love it so much that, because your parents just want you to be happy, they don't want to take away the thing that brings you that much happiness. So I think that was the point in which my parents said, okay, it's her life, she can do it.
Fantastic, lovely, perfect answer. And what I would say about that is, you mentioned as well, Mia, that you applied to university through UCAS as well, liberal arts programs, as well as the QCAS conservatoire. So there is the option, very nicely, when you're applying to conservatoires, that you can do that alongside your university choices, and that actually really keeps your options open. So that's one way to kind of get around that if you're not quite sure which way to go. Keep your options open. Brilliant, thank you so much, Mia. As I say, I'm sure we'll come back to you later at the end to field all of our questions with our other speakers. I'm now going to hand over to our next speaker, Olivia, and you may well recognise her. She is currently performing on television in Emmerdale. So without further ado, I would like to introduce and hand over to Olivia. Welcome, Olivia.
There we go. Can everybody hear me now? Okay, I forgot to unmute, sorry. Hi, everybody. So my name's Olivia. It's really nice actually to hear everything that Mia said. I was at Manchester High, well, I graduated in 2008. But she was just reminding me a lot of the kind of things I was doing at the same time, which was a lot of extracurricular activities and running around from the music department with like a violin on my back, and then suddenly to a play, and Miss Hannon saying that I was probably late for form every day. Yes, she's nodding at me. But anyway, I'm obviously a little bit further down the line. I now am a professional actor, and I'm currently in Emmerdale. So I've been in Emmerdale for about 3 years now, and I play a character called Dawn. And I love it. I really love it. So hopefully I can give you a little bit of an insight into what it's like to be a jobbing actor. I did do a slightly different route to Mia, and came to the conservatoire kind of aspects of it later. So I did go to uni, and I kind of went down like more of an academic path before vocational. But first of all, let me start with what I did at school. So when I was at school, I probably didn't think a professional acting career was really a realistic option, to be honest. I loved it. I did loads of drama and theatre. Like Mia said, there's fantastic opportunities of extracurricular things, and I did quite a lot that was outside of school as well. So there were some fantastic opportunities with the Royal Exchange Theatre, which I would recommend people look at, things like National Youth Theatre. I'll make a list of links that I can send after this as well, because there's so many fantastic opportunities if you want to get kind of training and youth theatre and so forth in Manchester. And I didn't think it was necessarily, well, it seemed far off and unrealistic to say that you wanted to be an actor, to be honest. But I loved it. I didn't take drama as a GCSE or for A-level, simply because at the time I was doing music. I did English literature and history. I don't think it's necessary to take drama if you want to be an actor, but obviously it's helpful, but it hasn't kind of held me back for not studying that academically when I was at school. So the A levels I went on to do, I did English literature, music and history, which I loved. And then I went on to Bristol University to study music. I did go down the route of feeling like I needed a backup. I needed something that wasn't a conservatoire or a vocational choice straight away. And I think that was just because I hadn't got to that mental place in my head of knowing what I wanted to do yet. It seemed quite a big leap, and I felt like I needed to keep my options open. And it did work for me doing it that way round, because what I did think was positive about going to university was that I was surrounded by a wide group of people who weren't all studying the same thing, and it gave me a little bit more of a context of things that I wanted to do. And I suppose this is what Mia picked up on as well with the societies, that there were some really good options with like drama societies and music societies, which were actually at a quite good professional standard. So I spent a lot of time at Bristol kind of being in plays, but again, still hadn't decided that I wanted to be a professional actor. And I think that is the thing, that, you know, you don't have to know exactly what you want to do when you go to university, as long as you're doing something that you enjoy. I think that is the key thing I would say at the time. And I'm really glad that I went to study a subject that I loved, because it just meant the whole experience of being at uni was really, really enjoyable. I actually did enjoy the work as well. And so, you know, I worked quite hard. And then once I graduated, I moved back to Manchester, and I knew that I wanted to take a kind of a creative career, but I wasn't necessarily, again, sure exactly of the direction. So what happened was I started interning at a theatre company called Hartshorn Hook, which is quite sweet actually, because they were set up by two Mancunian 19-year-olds, one who'd gone to Manchester Grammar, and they were, at the time, they were a bit older than me, and they had started this production company just above a pub in Salford, and I was interning with them, and I would go every day, and was getting to learn a little bit about theatre production and that kind of thing. And now they are basically kind of running the West End. They've got, well, they've won an Olivia Award. They've got about 10 productions on the go. So it's a really nice thing to see them do so well, really. But they were quite instrumental in me deciding to go into acting, because I got to see the theatre production world. And then I decided to go to drama school. So I would say for me that the actor training and vocational training was really important. And again, I think there's a difference between studying drama at university and going to drama school, and both are really valuable. But I think you don't probably at a university, if you're studying drama, you wouldn't get as much practical experience, and they're two very different kind of experiences, really. I was glad that I was a little bit older when I decided to go, because it gave me a life experience. It meant that I could kind of draw on things, and I felt I was also ready to work really hard practically. I think drama school it's a weird world, and but it's fantastic. I had the best time, but it is, you know, it's very intense. We had to wear all black. We'd have to go in every day. It was 9 till 7, really, very intensive. And I think I probably needed to have done university and had a bit of fun before I was quite serious and studying Shakespeare like that. But I loved it, and I actually did a postgrad course. So what that meant is that I just did a year, an intensive year. It was in Oxford at the Oxford School of Drama, which is on a farm in the middle of nowhere, very little phone signal. It was an intensive year, but it was a big age range as well. So people had studied other things. Some people had been professional actors and then come to study and stuff. So that was really good for me to basically have a chance to really experiment to perform every day, to get things wrong. And I think it was definitely one of the best decisions I've made. And I would caveat this with the fact that drama school training is ridiculously expensive. And I think, you know, often it can put people off because you're not necessarily having a guaranteed career after doing your training. But in the last couple of years, there's been so many funds and more opportunities for people who maybe have studied first. So because I studied first and I'd already got student debt, I managed to get a Dada award, which essentially allowed me to go and my fees were paid. So it was a really wonderful opportunity, and I'm so grateful for that. But there are lots of things to look into. So I would just say, don't be put off by the extreme fees at RADA and so forth, because it doesn't have to be like that. And you can also do drama training and very brilliant vocational drama training in evenings, weekend schools. Obviously at the moment, you know, COVID's making things difficult, but in normal life, there are fantastic, again, I've got some quite good links that I'll send over, but there's some fantastic kind of evening schools and stuff. So you don't have to do full-on training because it is quite daunting for people. But that's what I did. So I did a year at the Oxford School of Drama. And yes, and so then I graduated. And the thing about going to a drama school that is positive, if you are looking to be a professional actor, is it allows you to do a showcase. And the showcase is kind of the important thing in order to get an agent. So probably the key aspects of being a professional actor are needing to get an agent potentially to put you, and you don't have to have one, but it's very helpful, who puts you up for roles and submits you and essentially manages your career. You then can get an equity card, which is essentially like a kind of a professional acting card that's your union. And then you can also join something called Spotlight, which is a database of actors. And all of these things are made a little bit easier if you've done some accredited drama training. But again, it's not the be all and end all. But I did find it very, very useful. But then a lot of the students that I studied with have gone on to do things that aren't acting. And this is a little, you know, one thing I would also say is that the training that we had has been so helpful in just people going off into lots of different careers. And so don't feel like it takes you down a really, really narrow path if you are interested in taking kind of vocational acting training, because the skills that you gain are so useful in so many aspects of just general life, but in so many careers. You know, communication, being adaptable. I mean, all actors I know have had to work lots of different jobs and are so adaptable and are able to really put their hands at anything. Confidence, empathy, you can deal well under pressure. And so I think, and if quite a lot of my friends have, after the training, split off and gone into production or direction, writing, and teaching. So yeah, so there's loads of brilliant options as well. I think that's something always to remember. So then what happened? Yeah, so I got an agent and I decided to move to London. And this is probably a good point to talk about being a resting actor, which I'm not trying to put anyone off this career at all, but it is a realistic part of the job. And when we say a resting actor, what we mean is that you're not working. And you know, the realistic aspects of this career choice is that quite a lot of the time you're auditioning and you're waiting for a next job, and then you work with people very intensely on a job and kind of build a family and have a fantastic time, and then the job ends and then you're resting and then another job starts. And I love that aspect of it. But it can't always be so predictable about how long it will be in between jobs, and I think that's what people struggle with a little bit. So that is one element of it that's good to know about, but also I think that's where it's nice to have other things that keep you going. I've got friends who kind of balance writing with acting or produce at the same time. So that's been a big learning curve for me, to be honest, about how to make a life that works well and is not just waiting for the agent to call. But now I am in a much more stable position with acting because I'm in a soap. So to be honest, you can't really get more day jobby for an actor than a soap, and I absolutely love it. It's so fun. I did quite a lot of theatre in London before I came to do the soap, but I always really wanted to do film and TV, and so it was really nice to get this part. Theatre and telly are quite different worlds to go into, actually, and the day-to-day is quite different. I mean, at the moment, I'll let you know a little bit about the day-to-day of working in a soap. So I would get up, usually I have to be on set usually at 7 o'clock, which is very early, but I'll do it pre-COVID times because obviously this has all changed, but we would come in at about 7 o'clock in the morning and you'd go straight into makeup, and you'd get your makeup and your hair done and whatever was happening that day. My character's a heroin addict, so I never get any glam makeup, and it's a real shame. But then I would go to costume, and you'd have different changes throughout the day, and you'd get ready, and then you'd probably be on set, and you'd go onto the set and you'd do a read through of the scenes that you've got coming up, and you could have up to 8 scenes a day, which is a lot of lines to learn. And because it's soap, it's very fast, so you're doing a quick turnaround, but the lovely thing is that you are working with the same people all the time. So that's something that I really love about this particular aspect of this job, is that you are in a kind of big family. So in the building, you've got all the different teams. You've got the crew, and you've also got the writers, and you've got the production staff and so forth. So that's a really nice aspect of working in a soap. I'm just checking the time. Lex, can you give? Yeah, okay, fine, because I'm just rambling on here. But what I would say with theatre, what I really loved about doing theatre, and I hope to do a lot more, like I say, I really feel like I'm at the very beginning of my acting career, but yeah, with theatre you would be doing kind of longer rehearsal periods, and you'd go in and you'd probably get to know, you'd really analyze your text, and you'd get to know your part really well, and then you'd have maybe 6 weeks of rehearsal, and then you might go on to kind of do evening shows, or you could even tour. So there is the opportunity to do, you know, a lot of travel. It can be not glamorous at all. You can be traveling in a van on maybe an educational tour around schools, or you could be, you know, so there are varying degrees of jobs and also like different experiences. But what I would say is the really lovely thing is that you tend to meet fantastic people and make these little families and a very intense creative bursts of work, and then have a break, and then creative bursts of work and have a break. But yes, back to soap. We work Monday to Friday. We have our weekends off, and it's very stable. And so at the moment, that's what I really like. So I'm here to tell you it is possible to have a stable 9 to 5 acting job, essentially, until they kill you off, which could happen at any time. Let's see what else I had to say. I think for me as well, I just would say that acting and training to be an actor, the value it's given me in my life in terms of the people I've met, the confidence that it's given me in various aspects. I think, and I was trying to say this earlier, it can feel a very daunting thing to go into, and also to say to people that I want to go to acting when you're in an academic school where people are potentially doing more stable things. But Manchester High has a fantastic opportunity to try things out. I found that at the time, and also so doing kind of studying drama at any stage, I just think is a really valuable thing for the rest of life, and whether you go on to do it professionally or not. I am so happy that I've done it professionally, but I would say that it's been a wobbly, rocky road, and I think for most actors they do find that, because you've not got that thing that you have from school where you potentially work really hard and you go A, B, C, and then you get a grad scheme, and then you definitely get a job. You are having to kind of, it is a little bit more down to luck and hard work and that kind of thing. But for me, it's been 100% worth it, and worth the risk taking aspects of it as well. And also just knowing that there's a big wide world surrounding not just performance, but there's this big world that you can learn about as well if you study as an actor. I feel like I might have rambled on enough, but I'm sure I will answer any questions if anyone does have any. And I hope that's useful, and you can see a kind of bit of the day-to-day of acting life.
Lovely, that's fantastic, Olivia. Thank you really, really much. Very much. And I like, particularly, you covered a lot of different aspects there, you know, the different trajectory, the different journey you took, and the route you've taken to get where you are now. That's covered, you know, both of those things that Mia was saying, or we were saying about, you can apply to university and you can apply to the vocational as well, and having both of those things is really useful. And I particularly like at the end, obviously you've had a fantastic journey and learnt so much along the way and developed confidence and life skills and friendships and all those things. But I like at the end about the risk taking, that sometimes, you know, you have to be prepared to take a bit of a risk if it's something that you really want to do, and that there is not always a straight trajectory in every single career that you go into. And if you're somebody that is happy to go down that pathway, then this is something definitely to explore. So thank you so much for that. And you mentioned that you were a heroin addict in the soap you're currently in. I haven't seen those episodes, but I'm really hoping they don't kill you off. I think we need positivity at the moment in the world of coronavirus and pandemics. What we need is for your character not to die. So just tell them we said that, and hopefully they'll take that on board. There are some questions, but I'm going to come to those at the end because they're more general about sort of, you know, career qualifications and things like that. So definitely seeing them, but we'll come to those a bit later on in the evening. So thank you so much again, Olivia. And I'm going to hand over now to our next speaker, Sheena, who works for the Ambassador Theatre Group. So thank you so much, Olivia, and over to you, Sheena.
I just watched Olivia do that and thought I must remember to unmute. I forgot. I'll start again. I'm Sheena Wrigley. It says on the screen in front of me I work for the Ambassador Theatre Group, which is true. An easier way to understand my job is to say I'm the director of the Palace Theatre and Opera House here in the centre of Manchester. I'm going to do this slightly differently. It's been absolutely brilliant for me listening to Olivia and listening to Mia, because your stories have so many echoes of mine. I am a good few years older than both of you, so I'm going to tell my story, but I'm going to do that towards the end of what I wanted to talk about. And I hope when I do that, the whole thing will slot into place. So what I thought I'd do to start with is just talk a little bit about the world I occupy now. So I am basically in charge of two of the very large theatres in Manchester. This is the image you're looking at now is the inside of the Palace Theatre. And later on we'll see some images of the Opera House pop up in parts of the other other parts of the presentation. I came to these jobs, I came to do these 2 jobs, or this 1 job running 2 theatres, 3 years ago. But I was actually brought up here, so I went to school in Manchester. So although I didn't go to Manchester High School, and I can talk about that a bit later, a lot of my training and my education was also in this city. And going to theatres like the Palace, like the Opera House, like the Royal Exchange, like Contact Theatre, and all of those cultural activities we have in this city is part of what inspired me really to get involved in the theatre professionally, and eventually to end up as a director and manager. I think I have to ask for the slides to be pushed on. So can I have the next slide, please? Is that how it works? And you can, so I'm going to talk a bit about what jobs exist, what people do, and how you get into those jobs. I've put these photographs up because I've run quite a few theatres in my time. I started, my first theatre building was Harrogate Theatre in Yorkshire. That's the small theatre that says Harrogate on it. The lit up one that looks like a wedding cake is the Bradford Alhambra. The modern building to the right that looks like a sports centre is the West Yorkshire Playhouse, recently refurbished and called the Leeds Playhouse over in Leeds. And the big shiny roof that you can see is the inside of the Opera House on Quay Street in Manchester. Can I have the next slide, please? So when we talk about theatre, we often talk about what we see on stage, and Mia and Olivia have talked really eloquently about that. It's also where I started my career, but what I do now is the bottom bit of this pyramid, which is the stuff we do off stage that we don't always see. So I'm going to spend most of my presentation just talking about the sort of things that go on behind the scenes that support the actors, the producers, the directors, and what the audience sees. Next slide, please. So we've heard a lot from the actors. It was absolutely amazing, actually. It's very nostalgic for me. The acting team, the productions are supported by this second team, which is all of the creatives, the people who technically put the theatre on in front of an audience. And then at the bottom of my pyramid, I'm looking at all of those other people in the background who are working every day to support the business of the theatre, which is the side of the theatre that I'm more involved in now. So it'll not escape you that a lot of these jobs don't sound very creative, and in fact a lot of them aren't. And many of the people doing the jobs, particularly in the bottom 2 parts of this diagram, have come from entirely different backgrounds and studied entirely different subjects at school and at university to the subjects that Mia, Olivia, and ironically I also studied. I studied theatre studies at university, and we'll come back to that as I keep saying, but a lot of my colleagues doing the same job as me came through accountancy or came through technical theatre work. They didn't necessarily come through an artistic background. So it's interesting to see where you start and where you end up. Okay, have the next slide. So this is the creative team. Just these are the people that were in that second part of the diagram, all the people who help put the production on. We've got directors who make the artistic decisions around the production. They're working with a set designer, a musical director. They might be working with a movement director or a dance coach. Somebody is making the props, the costumes, designing sound, audio visual work, and all of that is generally organised, financed, pulled together by the producers or the producer. And all of those people will have come through really different routes, probably to arrive in that team. There are people there who will have been to art school and studied art and design. There will be people who have been at dance college. There will be people who have done electronics and technical work, IT specialists, and people who have done sort of craft and skill-based training. Can I go on to the next slide? This is some pictures of people in our production team at the Palace and Opera House doing various jobs. This is the technical team. And if we go on to the next slide. And here is a little bit of a breakdown of some of the people in that team. So you can see again, even within that team, there's lots of specialisms. chap on the right, who was on the previous slide, he's our chief electrician. His background is not university based. He's come straight from school. He did technical qualifications. He's a qualified electrician, and now he manages a team of electricians. So there's lots of different opportunities for people from with very different skills to come together and be part of this big team that's involved in putting theatre shows together. Next slide, please. Just returning to this, we're going to have a little look at the bottom section now. This is where we start to look at the people who are really behind the scenes. So this is a lot of the people that I work with day in, day out. So we can go on to the next slide. Marketing communications, these are the guys who publicise all our shows. This is the people in the photograph are part of the marketing communication team at the Palace and Opera House. They are responsible for press, media, social media, videography, communications, external relations and PR. And they work very, very closely, often with the producers, with the creative team, with the director, and try to get the news about the show, the promotion of that show out to audiences, because a lot of the businesses that we're involved in require us to sell tickets. So we obviously need people to come and see the shows. And these people in the marketing communications team are helping us develop our stories, to place them in the press, to place them with radio, media, and increasingly now on social media, of course. The smaller lady, Abby, who's the one with the video camera, she does all our videography work, which is a really key part of this team now. And her background is as a photography and film student. Some of the other people in there I know studied English at university, so their writing skills are very strong. Or they've studied other humanities subjects, which means that they're very good at communication and working with people. Go on to the next slide. Our box office and front of house team. This is an interesting team because this is a customer facing team. It won't have escaped your notice that quite a lot of the customer facing team in theatres are quite young. It's an interesting team because it's often a job that young people take when they're studying other subjects. So a vast majority of our front of house team are students at one of the Manchester or Salford universities, and they're often studying arts or music, and they work for us part-time to support their studies. Sometimes people like it so much they don't leave, and we've promoted, in fact, one of my most senior managers at the moment started as a student front of house with us and has been promoted now to one of our senior managers within the company. And this sort of career trajectory, almost accidental sometimes, is also a way in for people who perhaps want to work in a theatrical or an artistic environment but don't themselves want to be the creative, the artistic person in that team. So it might feel like a part-time student support job, but it might also open some doors for a different type of career than you perhaps imagined at the moment. Thank you. Can I have the next slide? Education and engagement. A lot of theatres have quite substantial departments that just work with young people, community projects, might work with older people, people with dementia, or may run youth theatres. Olivia talked about education trips, education companies working in vans going out to schools. I've worked in a couple of theatres where that's exactly, we've had a theatre and education company who've been attached to the theatre, and they have been touring into schools or touring into community settings. So there's opportunities both for performers in this kind of area, but also for people who are workshop leaders and teachers and instructors. And also it's the one way that many of us find our way into working professionally in the theatre. I started engaging with theatre by being in a youth theatre at a local theatre, and many of the big theatres in this city, as has already been mentioned, have groups for young people. They have opportunities for people who are wanting to develop skills as actors, performers, writers, filmmakers. And it's one of the great advantages of being in a large city like Manchester is so many of the cultural organisations here have these opportunities. Next slide. That's just a little quick summary of just pulling out really some of the people who are in the kind of management and administration side. Finance team, I've worked with some brilliant finance directors. They're all chartered accountants. They've all studied economics or accountancy. They are all chartered accountants who choose to work in the arts because they really love the arts and they enjoy being part of this kind of working environment. Similarly, things like IT, they're actually IT specialists, but they work within an arts setting because they enjoy the atmosphere, the camaraderie, the excitement of being close to the creative industries. Just popping on to the next slide. So this is the job I do, and that's me with some lovely friends. I was actually really overly excited to meet the Teletubbies. They're quite freaky because they are quite big. So I'm the chief executive or the theatre director. It depends, the name, the job title depends upon the type of theatre you work for. And basically my job is to lead the business. So that's to provide a vision for the business, to do all of the planning around what kind of shows are we going to do, to lead the financial side of the business and to manage all of the people who work for the company. But that's not where I started. So if we go to the next slide, which would be a bit more pleasant to look at and slightly less freaky than the big Teletubbies, I'm now going to talk a little bit about how I ended up doing what I do. I went to school in Manchester. I went to a school that doesn't even exist anymore. It was a girls' grammar school called Fallowfield High School, which was in Withington, but was a tiny Church of England high school and was knocked down, I think, in the 1980s. But at my school, there was the opportunity didn't exist to do things like drama. So like I think Olivia, you said you didn't do drama at school. I didn't either. I did all my drama outside school in youth theatre. When I was young, and this will start to date me, there was something called the Manchester Youth Theatre, which was a sort of offspring of the National Youth Theatre. And I was a member of that for several years, as well as belonging to youth theatres at Contact Theatre and in Altrincham. I didn't have anybody in my family who was in the theatre, so although I had absolutely no personal pressure from my parents not to do it, there was definitely an anxiety about just becoming an actor, which was what I thought I wanted to do at the time. I also went to university as a result of that. So I did a theatre studies degree at the University of Warwick, because I was, again, a little bit like you said, Olivia, I was trying to hedge my bets a bit in terms of having the academic background, but also doing the subject that I absolutely loved. And for me, that was also the right decision. I absolutely adored the academic study, actually, and I did more academic work than practical work when I had the choice to do that. But what I really enjoyed at the time was making shows. So a lot of the work I did at university, a lot of the things that are really special to me now are the shows that I made with the Drama Society, as opposed to the things I did on my my courses of study. And I loved making the shows, I loved producing the shows, and I loved directing them. So when I came to leave drama school, I decided that I would, came to leave university, I decided that I would go and do a postgraduate at drama school as well. And so I went to drama school in London for a year, a school called East 15, and very similar to you actually, Olivia, I thought, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to act or direct, but I felt it was really important to learn the skills of the actor. And I think everything you said about the kind of training that you get at drama school and what it equips you to do, both as a performer and a creative person, but also as an individual, is absolutely true. And I couldn't recommend it highly enough. It's also extremely hard work and extremely challenging, as both Mia and Olivia have alluded to. When I left drama school, I started doing the rounds of auditions. I got offered the odd job here and there. I worked in London for a while, but I'm quite an impatient person, and I did find the stress, I think, of working and not working quite difficult to deal with. And I didn't like not being in control of my own destiny in the way that that can sometimes feel. So I started putting projects together myself, which hiring rooms above pubs, producing work for other actors, running comedy clubs. And I found that I was actually really good at that. The role nowadays is known more widely as being a producer, but when I was young, that wasn't really as quite such a formed role. But basically, I like bossing people around, and I'm organised, and I like money, and I like audiences, and I like helping other people do something fabulously creative. So effectively I became a producer, and produced a lot of shows on the London Fringe and a lot of comedy. And then eventually somebody employed me properly to do that job, which meant basically someone paid me a salary to do the thing that I was doing sort of on a profit share basis. And from there, I've never really looked back. I've gone from kind of one theatre company to another, gradually increasing the size and scale of the theatres I've worked for. And as I've moved further and further away from acting and creating my own work, I've found, you know, I've been really stimulated by the other side of the business, which, you know, how you take a show and present it in front of an audience, how you get an audience, how you make money out of theatre, how you invest well in future projects. So I'm very excited by that, and that's why I've ended up working in this other side of the business, which is much more business orientated, but still gives you all of that wonderful excitement of being close to the creativity, of supporting and enabling others who can do these really creative, brave things on stage to do them. And there still is nothing like putting on a world premiere, which we did twice last year with the show and Juliet, and then Back to the Future this last March, before COVID took it away from us. There is nothing like putting on a show that has never been seen before in front of 2,000 people, and at the end of it, everyone gets to their feet and cheers, and knowing that you've been an integral part of making that happen. It is a tough and demanding career, and I think there are a couple of things I'd like to leave you with, just thoughts about things you need to bear in mind if you're going to go down this route. You need to have a huge amount of energy and resilience. It is physically demanding to do the work that everybody who's spoken to you tonight does. And also the psychological resilience of working and not working, of having to pick yourself up and make your own work when perhaps others haven't got work for you. I think the other thing I always say to people is be nice. It's not a very big industry. We kind of all get to know each other, our paths cross. You need to turn up, do your job well, be flexible, and just be nice to people, because you never know when that's going to come back to you. Apart from that, I would say it's an exciting career to have. You will not get rich unless you're incredibly lucky, but you will have an incredibly fulfilling life and meet some fabulous people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheena. That's fantastic, because it's a third and very different aspect and version of what we're hearing about tonight, which is absolutely brilliant. I love that we've had Mia, who is just starting on her journey and is doing conservatoire, but with the academic elements in there. And then we've got Olivia, who is currently working in TV at the moment and is forging what seems to be a fantastic career out of the sort of performance side of things. And then you, Sheena, who've moved slightly away from the performance side of things and into the sort of business or almost management side of things. So it's really, really nice to see these really, really different aspects. And what I also really like is that every one of you in some way or another has talked about a slightly different academic, school, extracurricular performance background, whatever route you took into it. But also the range of careers, particularly Sheena at the stage you're at and in your role, of all the different aspects in that pyramid of the different jobs and roles and skills that are needed and are available, so that people from all walks of life, all different training backgrounds and educational backgrounds can be involved in the creative arts in some way or another. You don't necessarily have to be front of camera, front of stage, performing to be involved in the creative arts, which is what I think is really, really interesting and hopefully fascinating and helpful for our audience, who may be thinking, oh gosh, I'm not sure if this is the right thing for me, but then realizing that you can have this whole range of other skills and job roles within the creative arts, which is brilliant. I think it's so thank you so much for that. It's been really, and seeing those pictures of those theatres in Manchester is really lovely, and please let us go back to them very, very soon. Please, Corona, go away. Sorry, that's just a plea from me. I think Anna sadly has been detained at work. I mean, it's excellent for her that she's had this job come up at relatively short notice tonight, which is really good for her. I think she's not going to be able to join us, sadly. So what I'm going to do now is I will in a moment be handing over to two members of Manchester High. So Miss Hannon is the head of careers, and she'll be talking a little bit about perhaps some of the more academic university-based routes in. And as we've heard, you can do academic wise at university, you can do theatre studies, or you could study music as an academic subject, but you can also do other things and do the kind of drama, theatre, music on the side. And then she's going to hand over to Mrs. Haves, who's our head of drama at school, and who's going to talk a little bit more about some of the practical and performance-led activities and routes in. And I should say that every year at school we do have one or two students who go to conservatoire straight from their A-levels, whether it be music or acting, and so it's a small but steady and successful cohort. And of course there are other students that go into traditional universities and end up going into these kinds of creative roles. And as two of our three speakers tonight have said, they actually did it as a postgraduate. So that is an option as well. So thank you so much to our guest speakers. Please stay on the line because we will have questions for you. But what I'd like to do now, if possible, is to hand over first of all to Miss Hannon, and she will then hand directly over to Mrs. Haves. So I shall mute myself and hand over. Thanks very much.
So hopefully everyone can hear me. Okay, so I usually kind of round off the talks by speaking about some of the different routes into this career area, and I'm going to do that as usual, but I'm going to kind of share that with Jill Haves. I'm going to cover the more kind of traditional, I suppose, university courses, and Jill's going to talk more about the more performance-based kind of options. But I suppose before I start off, I just want to point out, so for those of you who are in year 9, year 10, year 11, you have plenty of time to decide about your options. You know, these kind of decisions aren't really, well, they don't need to be made until the end of year 12, the start of year 13 even. And as Mia said at the start of the evening, you can apply to both and keep your options open until, you know, you get your A-level results, really. So, you know, don't feel pressured into choosing one route or the other. So for the first course, I chose music at Durham, and I could have chosen music at any other number of universities, really, but I hadn't talked about Durham for a while. So I picked this one. If the idea of studying music as an academic degree at, you know, a quite traditional, quite old really, Russell Group University, if that appeals to you, then this might be a degree that you want to look at. It does market itself quite forcefully as a top university music department. It's a cathedral city. It's got its 11th century cathedral and castle, which might appeal to you. The idea of making music and performing in that kind of setting is quite alluring. It is a traditional course, but it does have loads and loads of options within its degree. So it has the kind of options that if you've done A-level music you'll be familiar with, you know, like composition, the history of Western music and so on, but also maybe more niche options, you know, like the psychology of music or ethnomusicology, which was something I'd not read about until I looked at this, music technology. So it kind of presents itself as traditional, combining traditional elements with more kind of cutting edge. In terms of the practicalities, it's a 3-year course, and you can combine it with liberal arts, which I think was what Mia talked about as her possible other option. You can combine it with philosophy or with education studies, because obviously there's a link there as well, isn't there? For their typical offer, you know, what you need to get, at A level it's AAB, and that generally does include an A level in music, but they do seem quite flexible. So if you've worked through your music theory and got to the point of doing grade 7, that can kind of equate to an A level. And they do talk about, you know, whilst academic achievement and academic qualifications are important, they will look at your practical musical accomplishments as well. They're asking for a grade 7 or 8 in your first instrument, which to me kind of implies you need more than one. But they also say it's not essential, so they look at everyone, you know, as an individual, which is kind of encouraging. And there's also a study abroad option, either in Canada or in Europe. So that's a degree course, which you will see similar degree courses at you know, universities like Bristol and Manchester and all the Russell Group universities. But I picked Durham for its setting, really, and because it does come out top on some of the tables. Can I have the next slide, please? For my my other degree course, I picked theatre and performance at Warwick, which Sheena mentioned just now. It's a very kind of prestigious course at Warwick. Its entry requirements are similar to music at Durham. I think they're ABB. And what I liked about this was really, you can see it in the bottom right hand corner, is that there's an amazing arts centre at Warwick, and they're about to, I think modernise it, or it's about to get a big facelift, you know, several £1 million about to be put into it. So it's a great facility, and I was there pre-COVID, I think, watching a performance of Oedipus with my classical civilization students. Seems ages ago since we were actually in a venue, and it's a really great facility there. And I chose this course really because of the Warwick Arts Centre, because the students on the theatre and performance degree are actually able to produce shows that can be put on there. So, you know, that's a great opportunity because it's a professional arts venue. They also get the chance to, you know, work in internships at the Arts Centre, you know, and like all our speakers have said, there's so many careers within this sector. So they might get the chance to work in the marketing department or the staging. It's not just about performing. So in terms of this actual degree, you're also able to combine it. So you can combine it with English or with a European language. And again, there's loads and loads of options that just look so interesting when you look at them. So kind of theatre history, street arts and performance, post-colonial performance, the kind of more traditional modules of Shakespeare and so on. There's absolutely lots there. And if you go onto the Warwick website, it will give you all the information about how you're assessed as a student and so on. Next slide, please. So usually at this point, I talk more to our younger students in the audience, and I talk to them about things they can do now because they're not at the stage of making applications or anything. Obviously now it's really, really difficult, so there's not much I can say really, but it will come to an end. Let's hope sooner rather than later. And when we do return to normal, and I'm using that phrase so often, I'm sure, you know, you'll all be keen to take every opportunity that you can, whether that's in school or in your kind of local community, to actually get out there and perform. And I suppose we're going to appreciate, whether we're as an audience or as a performer, we're going to appreciate that more than ever, I think. Next slide, please. At the moment, what I would do is I would kind of read and find out as much as possible about what it's actually like to work in the industry, whether that's as an actor or a director or a musician or in any other role, because so much is difficult to do at the moment. But I would focus on, you know, reading the biography, watching the YouTube videos, reading articles like this, which I read the other day, and I really enjoyed. There were some really kind of lovely tips from Maisie Williams about auditions and casting calls, and she's very entertaining. It made me laugh because she talked about how she nearly didn't go to her Game of Thrones audition. She was quite young at the time, I think, maybe only about 11, because her school had put on a trip to a pig farm and she really wanted to go on the school trip. And it was her parents who actually persuaded her that she should go to the audition instead. I think it was just the fact that it was a pig farm. It just didn't sound appealing at all. But yeah, we're very limited in what you can do at the moment, but it is a temporary situation, and I would be finding out everything I can about the industry and about careers in the industry, and coming to talks like this. So I'm going to hand over to Jill Hayes now, who is head of drama at Manchester High, and she's going to talk a little bit about the more performance-based kind of options for study, and kind of wrap up that part of this evening.
Oh, thank you, Camilla. That's great. If I can have the first slide, please. Very interesting, Olivia, that you said the Oxford School of Drama. I've just written it down today. I think it's really vital that you do your drama school research if you want to go into the performing arts. What suits one person will not suit another, and there's some lovely places to go to study, either front of house or backstage, or as a performer, that we don't necessarily hear of as much as RADA or LAMDA or East 15. And I wrote down the Oxford School of Drama. I've heard lots and lots of really good things about it, so it'd be interesting to hear about your experience of that, Olivia. Thank you. And Alra, I was talking to somebody about quite recently, and it sounded like a great place to study for performing arts. As well as that, I know Anna went to Central to do stage management, and I think that they've got some superb technical and design undergraduate and postgraduate courses that are amazing, and have certainly led Anna into a very successful career in stage management. So please do your own research into what would suit you and what would be helpful for you to get to where you want to go to. Can I have the next slide, please? Great. Please, obviously my expertise is drama and theatre, but if you are interested in dance or music, please do talk to staff at school or people that you know in those areas. Places that I know are absolutely brilliant are the youth groups at the Royal Exchange, the Contact, the Lowry, Oldham Theatre Workshop are amazing. They get lots and lots and lots of students who go on to have professional careers in the performing arts. My children have done things with Urban Stage and Levy Little Theatre, and I know a lot of the girls at school have worked very successfully with the Altrincham Garrick. So please do join in, take part when we've got past COVID, and we're so lucky to live in a city or around a city like Manchester where there's so much to do within these things. But certainly talk to Mr. Bradley, talk to Miss Robinson at school, or any other contacts that you've got in dance and music, because there's so much on offer in and around Manchester, which is brilliant, and it will help you, get onto your ladder if this is what you want to do for a living. And the next slide, please. Just things I thought about that would be quite helpful is just to think about these things that cost us absolutely nothing. Drama school can be expensive. It can be you know, it can be financially quite draining, but these things will help you just stand out from the crowd. Everybody is going to be talented, you can assume, but if you can do these things and you can be these things, I think that will help you. And certainly when I see students like this at school, it's so lovely and refreshing and wonderful to spend time with these people. I think that's something that you can do yourself that costs absolutely nothing. Thank you to, as Mia said, take the opportunity, take the initiative. We do live here. We're very lucky. Things will change. You will be able to go back to taking part. So that's lovely. Those people who've said, how do you keep a positive mindset if you doubt yourself? How do you persuade your parents? If you're yourself and it feeds your soul, it will keep coming back to remind you. And I think that's really important. You need to be yourself. And if you can be that, you will be able to go on your career path, and you will be able to take that journey yourself. There's lots and lots of routes through. I know a huge number of students who've been through Warwick University, as Sheena said, who've been so successful. I keep hearing about Warwick, and it's lovely that such an academic course can lead to such a brilliant set of young people who come out of it. But it's certainly, it's not the only route, you know, as Olivia said, or Mia said, there's so many ways into this profession. And if this is what you want to do, then you will make it happen. And I think that's really important, that people like ourselves make the world a better place. And it's a really nice thing to feel at the moment, that the arts are making us what it means to be human. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much to Camilla and Jill for that sort of roundup of both the kind of university routes and what you can do there, but also some of the things available and routes in the practical arena. I think, as we've said a couple of times tonight, both of those things are equally valid. And you can do them at different times. You know, there are people who do a practical vocational qualification younger in life and go on and do something academic later. So never think that any door is closed to you, is what I would say, and particularly at the young age that you are, whether you're year 9 or year 13, you know, you've got options and choices ahead of you. So that's why events like this are really, really important and useful for helping you to find out and hear just different experiences, all of them equally valid, different, equally valid. Now, there are a few questions that I'm going to pose to some of our speakers tonight, and I'm going to kind of group them into general areas. And if you feel that your question hasn't been answered, please just email the address that Lex has put up on the screen, or that's on the chat at the top. And Olivia, I'm going to come to you first, and Sheena, it may be that something you can tap into as well, possibly, and it's relating to agents. Now, I know that that's a long way ahead. You know, people are just starting out and thinking about it, but obviously I think, Olivia, you mentioned it's helpful, perhaps important to have an agent. And I guess the questions are kind of around when is a good time to do that, and how important, also how do you go about getting an agent? So if you've got any tips for our budding performers, that would be really helpful. So Olivia, if I can perhaps turn to you first, and then after that, if we can go to Sheena. Sorry to leave you out, Mia. Mia, if you've got an agent already, which wouldn't surprise me, do feel free to chip in. Just let us know that you want to speak by waving. Okay.
Can you hear me? Yes. Yes, so I would say an agent is important when you're to be a professional actor, because they are, in some ways, they allow you, they put you up for different types of work than you would potentially be able to get yourself. They open a lot of doors, and they manage contracts and the legal aspect of things. However, what I would say is that a lot of my friends didn't get agents, and even when I had one, they didn't get me all the work that I did. A lot of the work I did, I actually, a little like Sheena was saying, I ended up making myself, especially when I'd first graduated. And a lot of the work I did was on the fringe. And so it is not the be all and end all. I think eventually you do need one, but particularly at the early start of your career when you're developing, the most important thing I think is to be able to be trying things out and to be able to be putting, if you can, have the kind of motivation to put things on yourself, to create theatre with groups of people. I mean, we put things on above pubs in London and stuff, but we I don't think I would have been able to get an audition on for screen work as easily without an agent. So so yeah, they are important. And in terms of how to get one, I think drama school does help because it gives you a showcase and a platform where lots of agents come and see. So that is why it's a really useful thing. But also, if you're involved in youth theatres, like you mentioned, Oldham Theatre Workshop, and I know I did lots with the Royal Exchange Youth Theatre or Contact Theatre, that you might be doing shows where you can invite agents to come and see you. Obviously not at the moment. So I think you can keep a dialogue with agents, and but yeah, I think the most important thing is just keeping yourself working and making and creating theatre, really.
I'd absolutely endorse everything you've just said, actually. I think the more visible you are doing something, the more likely you are to be able to create opportunities for agents to see you. You're absolutely right as well, what Olivia says about the drama schools, because that's what they do. They create professional actors and performers. They have the showcase, which universities don't have. Having said that, a lot of, probably some of my some of my most successful actor friends actually didn't go to drama school. They either came out of straight from uni, or they found work through local connections, really. And you have to look a bit harder for it, but they are there. There's a number of agencies around Manchester which are kind of almost like cooperative agencies, where the actors themselves act as agents for each other. So things like that going on, which you can locate if you stay based in one place for a certain length of time. Like Olivia, I went to London after I finished at university, rather than stayed here, although the friends of mine who stayed in Manchester, they had very successful careers within the northern theatres, and in fact got a lot more TV work than a lot of my contemporaries did, because they had that northern connection. There was a lot of production work going on here, and that's very true today as well. It's sometimes worth just looking at who is based locally, because they might be able to see you in things in the northwest, whereas in London you might find that you get a bit submerged now in the sort of huge number of people that are around. It isn't impossible without an agent, but I'd absolutely endorse as well what you said, Olivia, about I think screen work is very difficult if you don't have an agent, because it's just not as easy to form those individual relationships with other artists as you can for theatre.
Lovely, thank you very much. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more information and food for thought about the idea of agents. We have another question now, which I think I'm going to direct to Mia, which is about sort of keeping a positive mindset, motivating yourself. If you're not feeling, so for example, if you're a musician and you're just not feeling the motivation at the moment to practice your instrument, or perhaps if you're not feeling that it's progressing as quickly as you want, how do you make yourself feel more motivated and have self-belief? You know, that's something I think all people in the creative industries have to have. There may be moments of doubt, and how do you keep yourself motivated and that self-belief? So Mia, I'll ask you about that, seeing as you're in the midst of it right now.
So yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think it's something that we can all definitely all relate to. How do you keep a positive mindset, especially currently? It seems quite bleak, especially for the arts. I just find, I saw the comment about practice as well. How do you find the motivation to practice? And believe you me, I did not get to where I am being like the practice machine that practices all the time. Like that's completely not me, and it is very hard. It is very hard to sit down and go, okay, scales time. But personally, I just think at the end of the day, you are lucky enough to be doing your hobby as your career, as the thing that you love most in the world. That's what I feel blessed for it, because I feel like music could very easily just be someone's hobby, like they're just playing the piano at the end of the day, but it is my complete life. And if I ever lose that, I have just a few pieces of music that I listen to, or that I sing, that I think encapsulate the whole sort of drama and excitement of opera, for example, or like that one scene from a film that is so beautifully shot, and you're like, God, isn't this art so perfectly put together, so wonderfully done, that you can't help fall in love with it again? It's just like, try and fall in love with it again. Try see it how you saw it the first time that spark was ignited, and I think that would just keep you going, and it will never fade, really. I don't think.
Oh, that sounds lovely. That's so positive. I'm going to go away and watch my favourite scene from my favourite film or something. I think, yes, I think you're right to say that you can't be fully motivated all the time. And, you know, when something starts to feel like a chore, you perhaps need to step back and remind yourself of why you love it, possibly by doing something else for a few minutes, and then thinking, oh yes, and reminding yourself. But I think particularly at the moment, and it wasn't clear, I'm not sure if you're meaning in these questions right now or generally, but certainly at the moment it's difficult for people. And I think what we do need to bear in mind is that, you know, at some point this will end, and things may be different afterwards, but, you know, we'll go back to some sort of semblance of normality, maybe a reshaped normality. So there is going to be life beyond where we are at the moment, so also bear that in mind. And that's particularly important for, you know, students who are at school at the moment, where it seems like all they're doing is staring down a computer screen. So you know, step back from it and accept that you can't be the perfect practitioner all the time. Thank you, Mia. That's really helpful. Thank you. I wanted to ask, actually, somebody's asked about opportunities for working abroad. Now, this is a particularly significant question at the moment, because anyone who reads the press at all will have noticed that there are some slight issues with working abroad at the moment for people in the creative arts. So I wonder if maybe from a practicing actor at the moment, Olivia, and also Sheena, who works professionally on the more management side of things, business side of things, if either of you have any experience of or a response to the question of, can you work abroad if you are in the creative arts? So Olivia, if I could perhaps turn to you first, and then Sheena.
Hi. Yeah, I think Sheena's probably better to answer this really from a practical point of view. I mean, I've not really worked abroad myself very much, but in usual times, obviously, it is a real possibility, and quite often auditions will come through, and I'll see that it might be a tour that's somewhere, and you get an opportunity to go away to, like, for example, Broadway for a few weeks or something, which would be amazing. I have done a little tours around the UK, but I've never gone abroad really with work. But obviously with film and TV, that gives you more opportunity to do it. Usually, I think at the moment it is particularly difficult, and so much is unknown. But I think that is the nice thing about this career, that there isn't a set trajectory, and there isn't a set path about where you'll be or what you'll do, and there's lots of hubs where you can base yourself. And to pick up on Sheena's point earlier about, you don't have to necessarily be in London. You can be, you know, amazing regional theatre, and particularly in the north, where we're really lucky in Manchester. But yeah, probably not answered this question that well about going abroad, so I'm going to pass over to Sheena.
I'm not sure if I'm going to do any better. I mean, I have actually worked abroad for a period. I worked in Canada for about 3 years, but that was through and this is probably, there is probably a lesson in this. It was through people I knew who asked me to come and do some work with them, and that grew into quite a long-term job that took me out to Canada for about 6 months of the year for about 3 years. There is a lot of reverence about English actors and about English speaking perform theatre, which we definitely played on when we were touring in North America. So people really, I think because it, you know, a lot of classic plays in particular sound like people think they should sound if you speak with an English accent. There was a kind of interest in North America at the time, particularly in people working in North America. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think what happens now that we're not part of the European Union will also have an impact, which we can't really see yet, because there were a number of exchange schemes and collaboration schemes where countries and theatres from different countries were working together on projects. And whether those will still continue, it's hard to know at the moment. There's definitely opportunity to work abroad. The British Council does a lot of work promoting our cultures, our, you know, the UK British culture in all parts of the world. And there's always apart from the sort of more obvious diplomacy, there's always the softer side around visiting performers, dance companies. And certainly I've had lots of friends who've toured as dancers, as musicians, with orchestras, with chamber orchestras. So there is an absolute potential to do that. But I think it's largely about finding work with companies that have those kind of international relations. And then I think that would take you abroad if that's something you're interested in.
Super, lovely, thank you very much. We've got a few questions about sort of qualifications, in particular music and trajectories there. And I think there are kind of two aspects to this. On the one hand, I think we've heard from, you know, our head careers and drama, but also the experiences of our guest speakers, that there are so many different routes in and so many different ways to sort of take your qualifications forward. So on the one hand, you just need to look at the entry requirements, quite frankly, for the programs that you're interested in. That's one aspect. But another aspect, I think, relates a little bit more, there is a little bit more room for speculation, and it's to do with, so for example, if you want to go on and study music as a performing art, do you have to have done music GCSE or A level? And I think that, again, you can check that by looking at the entry qualifications. But of course, if you're in year 9 and thinking what my GCSE, I think it might be useful, perhaps, I want to actually ask Mia this. Now, we know that you did music A level and drama, and that you did a lot of music and drama extracurricular. Is there anybody on your course? It's obviously an academic but conservatoire based degree. Is there anybody on that course that you happen to know who did not do music A level or indeed GCSE music? Mia, is that, you may not know their personal qualifications, but I thought I would just ask you that sort of question to start with.
So yeah, so it's really interesting because when you go, you ask people what they did, blah, 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 blah. And I was personally actually shocked. I thought everybody going would have done GCSE music and A-level music, but that is completely not the case, because at the end of the day, it's based on an audition. So you could have done anything, who knows what, gone and did your audition, done amazingly, and they don't really care, frankly, what your A-levels are. So I have a friend, and she did 2 years at a musical theatre college. So she got BTECs as her qualifications, and she's doing the exact same degree as me, classical singing now. There are also people, as I said, that just did sciences and then went and did music. There is no sort of set thing. It's also not even about grades. You don't even need to have the grades. This is just for conservatoire, I'm saying, not for university. University, because it's a lot more academic, a lot more rigorous, they probably will require music A level. But I'm not saying the academics will be easier at conservatoire if you've done sort of GCSE and A level, but this, my friend Harriet, she won't mind me saying her name, she you know, did the extra work at the beginning, and considering I've had 5 years of music training, I'm like, oh, could have skipped that, but glad I didn't. But can do anything and reach the same point. So don't stress about, oh, is my grade 5 theory mark good enough? Don't worry about any of that kind of stuff.
Great, yes, thank you. I thought that might be the case, but I thought I would ask somebody who's kind of genuinely in it at the moment. And of course it is, you know, it is important, the closer you are to doing things like GCSEs, A-levels and choosing post A-level courses, that you do check entry requirements, and there may be some, so it's worth looking. And by all means, take a look now, even if you're at the earlier stages, just go on one of the conservatoire websites, just Google Royal Academy of Music and look at entry requirements right now, not this minute, but maybe after this, and then you can see the sorts of things that they're looking for. But the other thing I would say about that, kind of from a more of a careers point of view, is that, and this is quite opinion based, so please, this is not me telling you you must do this. If you are at our school or a similar school where we do GCSEs, A-levels, academic qualifications, or indeed BTECs, which also are academic but assessed in a different way, or equivalents IB if you're at a school doing IB. So if you have at your school the opportunity to study certain subjects which reflect your skills and passions and what you want to do further ahead, but you choose not to do, think about why you're choosing not to do that. If music A-level, for example, is offered and you know that you want to go on and do music and performance, not just as a hobby, but as a potential career, it's one of your 3 or 4 A-levels. So I would just ask yourself, why do I not want to do that? It's only one of 3. I can do French, history, biology, economics as my others, because I might want to go and be a scientist. But there's a part of me that loves music, or indeed drama. You know, I love drama, I want to get involved, I might want to do it as a university degree or as a conservatoire option. It's available to me now. And just ask yourself the question, why you perhaps wouldn't do that. Because if it's available to you and you love it and you might want to do it, it seems to me a perfect opportunity to actually take it up as something that you can study as well. But again, that's not a rule, it's just something to think about for yourselves. I'm saying that as a sort of head of sixth form careers hat here. Thank you for those answers from everybody. I have got another question. Finally, I think I'm going to sort of address to all of our speakers who may or may not have experienced this at any time in their careers. If you're in the performance sector and you ever feel sort of stage fright or self-conscious in some way, and I think we do hear about quite well-known actors who suddenly are overcome with stage fright. Is it possible to overcome it? Is it possible to have a career in performance if you also feel terrified of going out on stage and doing something? And any tips or words of wisdom for our listeners? I'll start with, let's go the order that we had our speakers. So we'll go Mia and then Olivia and then Sheena. Thank you.
So yeah, I think we've all experienced some sort of stage fright or self-consciousness. I think you may come across, I've certainly been told I come across as someone that's like, oh, you never get afraid, but I think it sort of comes with the gig. If you're going to be performing, of course you're going to be worried about what people are going to perceive of you. So it's a funny thing that we all have had to handle. I'm sure everyone will say very good things, but personally, just always try and channel it into something good, because no matter how sort of mind-numbingly, like it's keeping you in a straitjacket sense of fear that you've got, it is all just adrenaline at the end of the day. And the more you can challenge that, channel that into something positive that you can, because it's live performance, things are bound to go wrong. And I think my sort of epiphany came when I realized that I don't care what goes wrong, because it's just a performance. At the end of the day, some people might be filming it, but I don't really care. Like that, it will exist in their minds for that 1 second, and that's it. And as well, people don't know the script, people don't know the lyrics, people don't know what costume changes are meant to happen. People are just there to enjoy it. So oftentimes you're putting a lot more pressure on yourself than there needs be. So just zoom out, if that makes sense. Zoom out of it. Think this exists as one small moment in time. It's not going to ruin me as a person. And like that's what helped for me. I hope that helps for you.
Good, thank you. Olivia.
Yes, I have definitely suffered with this. I mean, I've had times when I've walked onto stage and said to myself 5 seconds before, I am never doing this again. This is the last ever time. It's a horrible feeling, but often what happens is actually at the end of the performance, the rush of everything feels so good that you forget about it until the next time. And I think it's actually when you're regularly performing, sometimes you lose the adrenaline of going on stage, and then you want it back, and and it's a really exciting, lovely thing. And so I think if you're regularly going walking on stage and doing like a long run of something, it's about changing those nerves into a feeling of excitement, I find, and kind of thinking, oh, I get to do this. But I mean, when I first started Emmerdale, because often you just have one take and then it's on screen, I couldn't believe how people were so casual. They would just chat right up until the take, and then someone would go and rolling and action, and then they just snap into it. And it's just all about practice and doing it lots. And now, I'm so relaxed on set, whereas at the beginning I couldn't. I was fluffing my words and so worried. So I just think the more you perform, the better you get at it. But it's totally normal.
Brilliant. Yeah.
I'm going to say, as a performer, it's a really, really long time ago for me, but one of the most valuable things somebody once said to me is, particularly about stage performance, just stop thinking about what you're doing and try and focus on just receiving the words and the words the other characters are saying to you. So you stop thinking, I've got to do something, and you're just sort of in a more of a receive mode. That really helped, because I think a lot of it comes from that sense that you're about to go and perform, but actually the reality of much acting is that you're just trying always to be in the moment. And one way to do that, and to stop worrying about yourself and whether you look stupid and if you're going to fall over the carpet or whether your dress is going to get stuck on a chair as you go past it, is just to focus on the other people around you who are performing with you and not think about yourself. And that sometimes does the trick of just taking you out of yourself for a moment.
Super, lovely. I think really good tips and advice from all three of our specialists there, from all their different aspects and stages of their career. So I would like now to, I think, draw this evening to a close. It was very, very lovely to hear from our three speakers. So I'd like to thank very much Mia and Olivia and Sheena for sharing their experiences and for giving this amazing talk, which I think people will take an awful lot from. I know that I certainly have as a careers advisor. I'd also like to thank Camilla, Head of Careers, and Jill, Head of Drama, for their expertise and presentations about routes into these career areas. I'd like to thank Lex for putting this evening together, and I'd also like to thank John Hayes, Head of IT, who's helped the technical side of this all get put together and run so smoothly. So I won't make any cliche jokes about the fact that creatives have all successfully navigated for 2 hours a highly complex and technical process. So well done, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, our speakers, and thank you so much for joining us, our audience. Hope you've got a lot out of this and that your questions have been answered. I know there are one or two that I didn't pick up on, but if you've got anything you would like us to answer, please just email the address on the screen and somebody will respond to that in due course. So I'm going to now draw this to a close by saying good night. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening and see you all soon. All right, take care. Bye bye, everybody. Good night.